Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. We will go right ahead like he says, so it won't be a long process, because the good thing about the English language is very short. So we can finish in record time. Today is a very important day, actually, for all of us sitting in this room, because today is actually World Refugee Day. So it's the best day for us to present on this issue. And as we celebrate in Abuja, we will also discuss the issues they will be discussing in Abuja. Actually, the UNHCR figures show that there is a record 71 million internally displaced persons and refugees worldwide in 2018. This figure has actually gone up, especially in the West Africa region. As imagine in 2018, these were the figures. Now we're talking about much higher figures because of the issues we're having in Latin America. There's a lot of internally displaced persons, and in the Sahel belt also, the numbers are rising. Just yesterday, we had attacks in Mali, in Burkina, so the figures keep going. The numbers in Cameroon are increasing by the day, not the week, and these are serious issues that ECOWAS is really looking at. Yesterday there was a meeting of ECAS that also focused on this same issue to see how we will work with people who have been displaced within the ECOWAS space. And for ECOWAS, since it has become a very important issue, we have decided that we will have a response to these displacement issues in the West African region, and that we will use the legal framework on refugees and internally displaced persons, which are 4 major legal instruments that protect refugees and internally displaced persons: the Geneva Convention relating to the status of refugees of 1951, the Protocol relating to the status of refugees of 1967, the OAU Convention governing specific aspects of refugee problems, and more recently, the AU Kampala Convention. All the ECOWAS member states are party to these important instruments on refugees and internally displaced persons and implement them in their various jurisdictions. The ECOWAS member states are actually leading in the domestication of the Kampala Convention on internally displaced persons. There are other non-binding but important instruments also for prevention and management and long-term solutions to forced displacements. The Refugee Convention focuses on these important areas. It defines who a refugee is. It establishes the norms of treatment of refugees. It establishes a duty to cooperate with UN Refugee Agency, in this instance UNHCR, and it establishes the principle of not sending back or rejecting any person seeking asylum as far as he or she meets the criteria of the definition of a refugee as found in Article 1 of the Convention. For the OAU Convention governing the specific aspects of refugee problems in Africa, 1969, the Convention fills the following gaps left by 1951 Geneva Convention. It provides a regional complement to the 1951 Geneva Convention, broadens the concept and definition of a refugee, insists on the fact that asylum is a peaceful and humanitarian act, which is important. And for the New York Declaration of September 19, 2016, which is very recent, the landmark New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants was adopted by acclamation at the high-level plenary meeting of the General Assembly. on addressing large movements of refugees and migrants. It was at the UN Summit for Refugees and Migrants. The declaration gave UNHCR the task of building upon the comprehensive refugee response framework, and which is in the annex of the New York Declaration, to develop a global compact on refugees, which was concluded at the end of last year. It was developed through a diplomatic process of consultation with member states, international organizations, civil society, refugees, and other relevant stakeholders. And it includes lessons learned from the application of the CRRF, and it was adopted 17 December 2018 through a UN General Assembly resolution. For the Global Compact on Refugees, some of us were actually missing at this meeting, but it was a very important meeting that took place a few months ago, towards the end of last year. The 1951 Convention on the Status of Refugees recognizes that a satisfactory solution to refugee situations cannot be achieved without international cooperation, such as granting asylum, which may be burdensome on certain countries. It is therefore important that this long-standing principle be translated into concrete and practical actions by widening the refugee system support base beyond those countries that have historically contributed to the refugee cause by hosting them or through other means. So what the Global Compact does is establishes the basis for more predictable and equitable responsibility sharing among UN member states together with other relevant stakeholders, which includes host community members and refugees themselves. The Global Compact is guided by purpose and principles of the Charter of the United Nations, the humanitarian principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence, and most importantly, the centrality of protection. The objectives are to ease pressure on refugee host countries, to enhance refugee self-reliance, to expand access to third country solutions, resettlement, complementary pathways, and to support conditions in countries of origin for return in safety and dignity. For the internal displacement, the Kampala Convention is the most appropriate convention for West Africa. It was adopted during the African Summit in 2009 and entered into force in on December 6, 2012. 11 ECOWAS member states have ratified it. Guinea, Ghana, and Senegal are signatories but have not ratified, and Cape Verde is the only non-signatory. The scope of the Kampala Convention as a legally binding instrument prevents internal displacement, protect and assist people during displacement, provide solutions, permanent solutions for the displaced, sets out specific obligations for states, including an adoption of national legislation, because a model law has been provided for countries, and establishment of compliance monitoring system. And for ECOWAS, our interventions include response to refugees and IDPs. We have the operational response, and we have disbursed through and worked with UNHCR and has disbursed 300,000 United States dollars to UNHCR for refugees in 2016 to assist Nigerian refugees. We walked through UNHCR, we walked through WFP because of the nature of the areas where IDPs are settled, which are highly controlled areas, so we have to walk through other organizations. So we have done that in the northeast of Nigeria. We have supplied items worth $1 million United States dollars to assist IDPs also in the northeast of Nigeria, disbursed $800,000 in cash and kind in 2017 to assist IDPs in Sierra Leone during the mudslide. And we continue to do this, but our budgets actually are not very high compared to budgets in other areas. So, but what we have, we make sure we give. And what we're doing now actually is helping countries directly by training them on how to quickly work on their humanitarian assistance as soon as disasters happen. So our World Bank project has been working with us. We have been buying different machines and whatever is thought important to the countries, especially in terms of weather forecasting, because it's this year we're expecting a lot of disasters in the region. So we're looking forward to more and more displacement this year, because the forecast so far is that there will be rains, a lot of rain and a lot of flooding and other natural disasters. So we're getting the different countries ready for that through the DRR project that we're housing, that work closely with humanitarian. So we're also, we organized the first IDP ministerial conference in West Africa this year, and we're working with member states and UNHCR to ratify, domesticate, and implement the Kampala Convention, because it's very important, and also the Abidjan Declaration on the eradication of statelessness, which means that we have to start registering births so that people will not be stateless. Because when you look at the number of people that are stateless in West Africa, it's growing every day as people move quickly from border to border without their documentation. And without documentation, you are stateless because nobody has proof. When you say you're from Nigeria, where's the proof? You don't have the documentation because maybe Boko Haram has destabilized you and you're in another country. So these are the issues that the Banjul Plan of Action on Statelessness takes into consideration. And what we have done is this year we have developed the humanitarian policy and plan of action, and all states were invited for the effective management of humanitarian crisis in the region. We have also established a model for national disaster management, which is the one I talked about, in all the member states. We have trained member states and we have given them everything they need to do their work. And we have held annual meetings of disaster management agencies for information sharing and best practices for West Africa. The next one should be in Cape Verde. And we have established also a disaster risk and EERT platform in member states for efficient disaster coordination. We have established the ECOWAS emergency response team to train member states and enhance their resilience. And we have the ECOWAS Sahel strategy to improve the economic condition in Sahel. So ECOWAS has been doing a lot of work, especially in these past 1.5 years. We have, we're also finally, since 2002, we're starting the operationalization of building the Mali depot, which will be the biggest humanitarian depot for West Africa, where we can easily supply countries with what they need in terms of disaster. So we start the process, and hopefully the way I push before I leave my job at ECOWAS in another 2.5 years, we hope to have the Mali depot completed, because it's the only one that will be in West Africa for humanitarian supplies. It's going to be the biggest depot in West Africa. Another thing, we continue, like I said, we continue to raise funds for countries and give them their funds directly to implement most of these agreements we have at international level as ECOWAS. So ECOWAS is far ahead of all the RECs in West Africa in terms of humanitarian and disaster risk reduction work. And we are proud of that. And we, in terms of the internally displaced, it's actually, we're expecting a lot more, like I said, this rainy season, as we expect flooded, people who are living in flooded areas to move out into other areas within their own country. So we're preparing for all these because at least this year we've been given, because of a meeting we had last year and training people from all the countries, now we actually have accurate weather forecasts because we provided all the instruments for them to make sure that they are able to, and we have all the weather centers in Africa working together for these predictions. So we are hoping that even though there will be a lot of disasters, we should be able to at least manage most of them. So I'll stop here, and if you have any further questions, we can discuss.